Welcome to STO Tech Trek. I'm Astro, my co-host over here, Aponte, and today we have a very special guest. A very good friend of ours, Tankia, is a drain master extraordinaire.
Hello, hello. How's it going?
All right. So in this episode, we're going to cover some good drain stuff. We're going to go over some traits, the new starships, because Aponte's done a lot of stuff with the new starships lately. So, yeah, we got a lot to go over, so let's get moving.
All right. So first, we have the new Discovery weapons that are coming out of the Discovery lockbox. In this pack, you could choose either phaser cannon, phaser beam, or disruptor cannon or disruptor beam weapons. Now, either way you go for energy type, you have a chance to get one of 3 specific style of beam for each energy type. You can get integrity-linked, emitter-linked, and sensor-linked. Now, all 3 of these are giving you their own special mod. So, integrity-linked is giving you plus 5, just base to hull cap and damage control, which is hull regen. Emitter is giving you plus 5 shield cap and regen, and sensor is giving you plus 5 defense and plus 5 weapon amplification. So basically what that means is integrity is giving you, let's say you have a full set of 8 of these beams. Integrity linked is going to give you about 12 to 13% more hull. Shield cap is going to be around the same thing. Now the interesting one here is the sensor one, because, you know, the shield and hull cap, not bad if that's what you need, if you need a little more tankiness. But the plus 5 defense, that's alright, but the weapon amplification, that's the one that actually had me really intrigued when this thing came out. So it's giving you amplification, which is crit D, crit severity. Now if you have 8 of them, you're getting 40. Each one of these beams gives you about 2% crit severity. So overall, you're looking at having 16 crit severity if you have 8 of these. So I've had a few people actually ask me, like, where do these stand with anti-proton, things like that. I mean, anti-proton obviously has the built-in inherent plus 20% critical severity for each beam. So, you know, essentially if you break it down, each one of these beams is giving you plus 2% crit severity. Now the difference being, obviously that's 18%, but the difference is that 2% crit severity is to your overall build, but I still don't really see that overtaking the anti-proton, which is giving you the built-in 20% per beam. So, you know, the other thing is, this is the big one, if you pick the phaser, you do not get the normal phaser mod. That gives you plus 2.5% chance to shut down a subsystem, nor do you get the disruptor negative 10% debuff. Now, if they still had the built-in procs that phaser and disruptor still had, these could be really interesting, but I think without them, they're a little lackluster.
So basically, these are not going to replace, like, the pen mod? Or what?
I mean, again, because now these are out of a box, not crafted. So your best bet, you're going to be able to re-engineer them. You can get your damage 4 with the good epic modifier that you want, things like that. I mean, they look cool. They do perform still well because, again, they're a good beam. I just don't see them being better. I mean, if you're just basing it on the crit severity, I don't see it better than AP. And because of the lack of the normal disruptor mod, I don't see them as better than disruptor if you have the disruptor ones. So I don't think so. But they are fun, they look cool, and they'll still do good for you. They're just not better.
Okay. And also, there was a nerf to, not a nerf, I believe it's a fix. People use nerf too heavily in their conversations. A nice fix to the Honored Dead trait.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Nerf seems like it's something that we liked, like kind of what they did to the plasma consoles or feedback pulse. You know, those were things that did need to get taken down, but they nerfed them into the ground, whereas they're not viable anymore. With this, when I first saw this trait, I wondered to myself how they really read these numbers and thought, okay, that's going to be awesome. I mean, it really was, but it was too much. So originally, Honored Dead was giving you, at the end of it all, once you had the max stacks, was giving you plus 400 damage resistance, once you would hit that, after that, every stack was giving you plus temporary hit points. Also, the way it worked before was it's for every 10,000 damage you take, you get a stack. Now, that 10,000 damage was being calculated pre-damage resistance. So now with the new fix, they cut the damage resistance in half. So now you're working your way up to 200 instead of 400. And also that 10k damage is now post your resist. So it's taking a little longer to build those stacks up. Now, overall, this is still a really nice defensive trait, I think, but now it's just been brought back a little.
Yeah, I agree immensely. I'm still using it on my builds and everything in ISA, and yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, I think it could still be a place where a tank, something like that, absolutely, it's a really good trait. Even for a DPS build, I think it's still to the point where if you have a nice balanced build, you could legitimately put this trait on. Yeah, you might lose one offensive trait, but I mean, you could legitimately take away all defense after that and just go offense everywhere else. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's really nice. Also, just a shout out to Darth Protius, who really helped out with a lot of this number crunching because he's been testing like crazy too. So some of this info is from him. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure his calculator's steaming at the moment.
Absolutely.
So Tankia, have you messed around with the honor dead trait at all?
I'm currently running it right now, and anytime I step into HSC or pretty much any map, I have to run it because my boat runs a little bit more threat than it probably should, so I get a lot of attention.
Yes, that's something we're definitely going to cover. If you want threat, Drain is one of those things.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure exactly with the diminishing returns of damage resistance. I do know when it was getting plus 400, it was taking us up to like 83 or 84 damage resistance. So I'm not sure exactly where that now falls in the spectrum of where with the plus 200 it's taking us, but, still something really awesome.
So anyways, last episode we talked about the Crossfield class a little bit, but it wasn't out yet and we didn't have the numbers or anything. So anyways, Aponte immediately logged on after the patch and bought the ship. Luckily, he got a good price on it and stuff like that. And you've been flying it here for the past week. You've made several videos, a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had a lot of fun with this ship so far. So, when it first came out, I jumped on, was able to find a pretty decent price because this ship, it's still selling right now for over 400, which is a bit high for a lockbox ship. So, but when it first came out, I was seeing them go off the exchange at 700 mil, 600 mil. So, luckily I was able to grab one of the earlier ones before the price hike went up. But, I was interested in this ship once the stats actually came out, which unfortunately for us was about an hour after we put out last week's episode. So,
yeah, I know. I was like, afterwards, I was like, crap.
Yeah. But, since then, I was playing with it. I wanted to test out, how versatile it was. Obviously, it's a science ship, and it's a really good science ship. Proteus got his hands on one, and I think he's about to put out a video using his delightful psi magic on it, which I look forward to. So, I wanted to go out there and test it. What could it do as a tactical kind of beam build, maybe put a budget build on there, kind of things like that. And I had a lot of fun flying it, first of all. The console that comes on it, it's a full universal console that can go on any ship. The Mycelium Ambush. So if any of you have seen Zefilms videos on these ships, which I'm sure many of you have, he's done a few where he put this console on, I think, the Enterprise J and the Vaunt, and it was really, really funny. But the console itself is actually quite interesting in what it does. So the passive stats, you're getting plus 50 to scientific readiness, a little exotic damage, drain, control, but the activatable ability, which is going to teleport you 8 kilometers forward. 2 self for that 5 seconds, plus 50% fire cycle haste for energy weapons, plus 50% accuracy, not a big deal in STF, but then also plus 25% critical chance. After 5 seconds, it does a torpedo salvo dealing kinetic damage and then jumps you back. The accuracy in torpedo, not a big deal, but that crit chance, depending on where you use this, and I've been playing around with that, that could be a really nice boost, plus the fire cycle haste. So I've been having a lot of fun, and the ship performs well in a lot of different builds. And that's one thing I had fun doing for the video. I like to show how versatile they are, and this one is definitely up there. So.
Yeah, but also, aren't they fixing the animation on that? Because it's not supposed to be used on other ships, correct?
Well, I think the way the console is supposed to be able to be used on any ship, but yes, the actual animation of the saucer section spinning, I believe, and that, I don't think that was supposed to carry over. I think on any other ship, it's literally just supposed to be a jump, similar to like the trajectory jump or something like that, where you get the benefits and all, but I don't think you're supposed to get the same visuals that are obviously, from the show Discovery. So,
all right. So we're going to move on to the Bajoran Interceptor. Again, I don't have the ship yet. I got to grind it out like everybody else does. But Aponte here, Mr. Moneybags, was able to spend Lobby on it and get it quick. Now, you've been flying it as well over the past week, and you've released several other videos on the ship. What is your overall on the ship?
I always tell people a free ship's free ship, go get it. This one, I really, really emphasize that you don't want to miss this ship. First of all, it's a really fun, nimble little ship, capable of putting out good damage no matter what kind of build you put on it. It's got a real nice layout between its weapons, its console layout. The bridge officer seating is not perfect, but you could definitely make do with it. It does have a pilot, which one of the good things about having pilot right now, if you're running cold-hearted, so it was able to make use of that trait, which is a trait I enjoy right now. I mean, I flew it with a high-end beam build. I flew it with a torpedo build, and I had great success. And another beautiful thing about it, and this console is, I'm calling a must-have, it has to be, the domino console that comes off this ship. I said to people, this reminds me of Timeline Stabilizer, a little in the fact of it does give us some of the same things Timeline did, and also Timeline Stabilizer was the anniversary console from 2 years ago. So it's giving us plus 15% phaser damage base and accuracy. Nothing big, nothing crazy there. The actual activatable ability for 10 seconds is giving you plus 25% fire cycle haste for energy weapons, plus 25% bonus all damage Cat 2, plus 25% recharge speed for bridge officer abilities. And the one I think I love the most, plus 100% recharge speed for torpedo weapons. Meaning, the recharge, I mean, obviously, if any of you have messed around with torpedo builds, the torps all have differing cooldown times, 6 seconds, 12 seconds, depending on, which torp it is and what type of torpedo it is. So once I hit this, I mean, you saw them flying out.
Yeah, see, I was under the impression when we first heard about it and was kind of getting some of the stats, I thought this ship was just going to be PvP. That's it. I had no idea that you were going to be able to do as much as you can with this ship.
Yeah, because again, the console, a little accuracy heavy, the Starship trait, the same thing.
The experimental weapon?
Well, the experimental weapon, that's another part. That's another really nice thing about this ship I talked about. I haven't messed around with a lot of them, but compared to some of the other free ones I have, I saw some really good numbers, upward of 10 to 11k, in just the few different kind of runs I did with this weapon. So I think it's actually, it's definitely up there, I would say, for, some of the better, and it's on a free ship. That makes it all the more better,
Yeah, because trying to get the one from the competitive store right now is a little problematic, because, what was it, last night we sat for over an hour trying to do a run, and there was 5 of us?
Yeah, pretty hard to get that queue to pop right now. One more little thing, and this is actually pretty crazy about this console. If you defeat a foe during this 10 seconds where you're getting all these buffs, you get plus 2 second duration to all effects. May only occur 10 times. Only 10 times. Are you kidding me? So you could essentially get 30 seconds of all these buffs. Now, when are you going to be in a position to kill all these foes? Right now, I've been using this right where I use dynamic. Let's say we're talking ISA, which is pretty much what we use as the map to kind of talk about this stuff. Right as you finish taking down the transformer on the right side, and now you're heading into the tactical cube, the gateway, and the spheres. That's where I hit it, right as I'm getting to those spheres, because those spheres will start dropping while this console's up, and that extends this duration, so really nice.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on it. I think I got like 8 more days or something. I don't know.
Honestly, not shameless plug here, but if you guys do want to check some of those out, I did a few different variations on both of those ships just to kind of show off their versatility, so, check them out if you guys want.
Yeah, so make sure in the links below, you'll see OTK videos. That's Aponte over here. Click on it, watch, subscribe.
And the only other one, I literally just bought it about half hour ago, so I haven't got to test it too much, is the Walker class. I didn't have too much high hopes for it, but I have a feeling the ship might surprise me, so I'll be working on that.
Yeah, and it's going for a pretty decent price on the exchange right now. Isn't it around like 250 mil?
Right. I just picked this one up for, I think, 211, so it's down.
Excellent.
For a T6 low-buy ship. I mean, yeah, that's still a good amount of EC, I understand that, but, for a T6 ship out of the low-buy, you're usually looking at 250, 280, sometimes 300. So, if you were interested in this ship, right now would be the time to go grab it.
Now, again, I haven't messed with all the ships and stuff this week because I still don't have them, but what I have been messing around a lot with is the re-engineering system. I absolutely love it. I've been pulling out old beams and re-engineering them, doing all crit D, doing, all damage, etc., etc. Anyways, but we were sitting there talking about now that everybody's trying to grab loot from, the STF missions and stuff like that. It's getting even harder now to get your hands on this stuff. So I was sitting there trying to think of like different ways of how to get salvage. So I started crafting Mark II beams just for the shits and giggles of it, basically, and then I would start salvaging those. And I noticed that I was getting about, 43 salvage from each one of those. And I can craft up to about 6 at a time for 5 minutes. And yeah, that's how I've been getting my salvage every day. Because when I'm sitting there just playing on the exchange or, looking through my tons and tons of consoles for a new build, I'm just sitting here crafting these beams.
Yeah, and think about it. So for each slot, essentially, if you were on that character doing other things and you were paying attention, you can get 10 to 12 of them for just one R&D slot an hour, and compare that to like a Mark 6, because I remember when you tested it, you were like, oh, let's see what a Mark 6, 4 kind of does. The Mark 6 gave you like 140, but took an hour. So in no way does that really equate. The Mark 2s are definitely the better bet. And the other thing is, it's not real. I mean, I know some people like to craft the beam, see what kind of mod. With the re-engineering and what the beam market has looked like, and it's going to be even less soon, none of that's going to matter. So those beams are worth not much more than just using for salvage. So.
Well, and that's the thing, if you're like me or any of us and stuff like that, we have so much crap just sitting in our R&D bank that we don't use, we don't craft with, and you don't have to necessarily use beams. Just use craft anything that's Mark II, trash it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not losing much, because, you are technically getting stuff back from it, but, again, it's been sitting there for years just accumulating, and it's not like you could sit there and take these materials and even make a profit off of them on the exchange anymore either, because it's just overflooded.
Like our good friend Hachi says, grab your loot.
Don't forget the loot. Hachi, where are you? I'm getting my loot.
Alright, so on to the big topic.
Proudly brought to you by Stress Relief Desk Hologram Emporiums. Located in all major stations and star bases in all 4 quadrants. Their top-selling product is now 50% off. So if you're feeling the stresses of command and need a release, turn on your Wesley Desk hologram and say,
"Shut up, Wesley!"
until the stress is gone. Now for only 5 bars of gold-pressed platinum. Max 5 per customer.
Yay.
Yay. Oh, Drain Master Extraordinaire, the king of lagging out the map so hard that, yeah, I cry for an hour afterwards.
Yeah, chances are if you've ever been playing STO and you just got kicked from the server for like 10 minutes, it's because Tankia broke the game, so send all your thanks to him.
Hey, that's only happened like 3 times.
You know, the funny thing is, before I started playing with you guys and all that, I remember hearing about this guy Tankia who breaks the game, and I remember thinking to myself, well, why does he want to break the game all the time? Little did I realize it was just you testing all this crazy stuff.
Pretty much.
Yeah, basically, I'd be sitting there, I'd get a huge lag spike, and I'd be like 5 sectors away from him, and then he'd come on Discord and be like, Astro, I did a thing. My God. What'd you do, Tankia? What did you do?
I always felt like I should just sit in like the corner after I test something.
Right? Just facing the wall with your little dunce cap on?
Yeah, basically. And a lot of it just came down to, like, especially when we get this new stuff out, I like collecting all the things the game has to offer, and when you have all the things and you have ADD like me in builds, and I like to basically put a new ship together every 3 or 4 days, you start putting a lot of weird pieces together just to see what's going to happen, and sometimes nothing does, and sometimes I lag out HSC for a good minute and a half.
Yeah. I mean, I do have to admit, dude, I've had some of the most fun I've had since we came back to STO was me and you sitting there talking about builds and kind of theory crafting the builds for Corfez Elite, you know, when we were trying to put together the right team, so.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason I like to have all the things, as I like to call it, is because I can go up and down a list, and when we're trying to do something very specific, you know, I have access to be able to read off what it is without having to, like, you know, dredge through the internet.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, with a lot of builds, is there's good overall builds, but then there's also specialty builds on top of those builds, because not every map acts the same. There's some maps where we don't need to have the fastest engines in the game to get from point A to point B. We can just sit there. So, you know, there's some amount of readjusting builds that people have to get used to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a big proponent of that and strive to tell people that, you know, there's the right build for the right map, you know, and there are some builds, like you said, that are just overall good and they'll perform well everywhere, but there are builds that absolutely are maximized for the map and circumstance you're in, so.
Well, oh yeah, like that idea, that brilliant idea that you came up with for Corfez with the aceton assimilators, absolutely made that so much better.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the differences from that first run we did, where it was just kind of everybody in their normal builds, to, you know, 2 or 3 runs later, after we had all started theorizing and putting together ideas, and luckily Drain Force 1, the fabled ship, came with us. I mean, you saw how much easier it got, just having a full team set up for that exact run, so.
Yeah, what was it? It took us 5 times to beat it, and then after that we did it 3 more times and just had no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, and even then a lot of that was, you know, testing there, because if it wasn't for the fact that I was running the drain boat, I wouldn't have figured out that rep trait that we got from the competitive actually can lasso the torpedoes.
That was freaking hilarious to find out. What is the name of that trait, real quick?
It is Force Challenge, and what it does is it will pull the target to within 0.5 kilometers of the user, and also drain shields. I was running it because it was draining shields, but it also happened to have this nice lasso effect that when the torpedo started getting out of range, I pulled it right back in and we could shoot it down.
Yeah. And, I mean, right there you go. There's something that also can equate over. I know for the most part it's easy, but I've been in some pug runs where I was maybe in a ship that, you know, I was testing something new, or it's a character that's not so well equipped, where I've actually failed Zincathi Red Alerts. So, you know, it's not all the time that you're going to have this great ship, and in Zincathi Red Alerts, there's also torpedoes you got to worry about. So, you know, little things like that could help for different maps.
Now, take it, when you primarily build for these, you build for HSE, and then you build for ISA, and then you build for CCA. All 3 of your drain builds are fairly different, or are they similar in style?
I would say they are about 90 to 95% the same backbone. Mostly the things that change are maneuverability. So, for instance, the that fabled DOF that helps cool down evasive maneuvers. That I typically will drop for HSE and CCA because we don't really need to use evasive maneuvers like twice in that
Agreed.
map. Unlike ISA that we do. So, that gives me a DOF slot and a new engineering station. So I adjust based off of kind of what I see me needing at that point in time in the mission. Like, for instance, Corfez, I was actually hop-swapping my bridge officer skills in between maps. Like, when we dropped combat and moved to the next section, I would change adjusting to what we were going to face. So, like, when we had to go up against Benthans, I put on the maneuverability stuff again. When we were, defending the space station, I took it off.
Okay, so, alright, for people that are new to Drain and stuff like that, I'm going to kind of go through a little bit of list of things. Like, what are the must-have starship traits and traits for a Drain build?
Okay, so the must-haves kind of go back to, this is going to be a little bit longer explanation, but what DrainX actually does. DrainX affects 3 separate things in-game. It affects how much power you drain, it affects how long subsystems are offline for, and it also affects shield drains. So depending which of those 3 things you want to build to accomplish is kind of the must-have traits. For me, I like to be able to rip off the shields the most. So I build around that whole aspect of DrainX, where I want to take all the shields off. I want to make sure nothing in the map has shields, because I run with enough people that run torpedoes and things that just don't appreciate shields. So
DPS.
So for me, I find the 2 big for spaceship traits, the best one I found to run is the improved Tachyon Beam. Because I run 2 copies of Tachyon Beam, because that is a good way of ripping off someone's shields in a hurry. And the improved Tachyon Beam also gives you a shield heal, AoE heal to all of your allies, up to 20 targets. And that can keep a lot of people alive that ordinarily would have problems. So like HSEs, for instance, when we're trying to slowly push through that, it's kind of like a nice wall heal for everyone to keep shields up. Because fighting Borg, it's hard to keep shields up for a long time.
Yeah, that's why, like, when I don't even focus on doing anything to my personal shields when I'm doing anything with Borg, because there's nothing you can do to negate that shield drain that they do.
Yeah.
No. Even me, I'm, like, right now, I'm sitting idle in space with no other buffs, just my equipment and my gear and my bridge officers and my traits. I'm at 817 DrainX. And DrainX is supposed to reduce drain effects on you. And I lose my shields just as fast as you guys do.
Jesus Christ.
So, note to self, the only reason to use shields is if it gives you a nice 2-piece set bonus.
Basically.
Sad but true.
Or in my case, my shields give me DrainX, so...
Yeah, exactly. So, alright, if someone's getting into Drain and they look at it as the basic kind of like what we talked about with the EPG or anything like that, alright, you want to build up your DrainX. But what are the actual abilities that, you're going to use that you want that high drain for? What are some of the things that you're using to do this damage or to strip shields? You talked about Tachyon Beam. What else?
So, I make good use of Tachyon Beam. I also will use Tychon's Rift. I will use Charged Particle Burst. I also will use a temporal ability called Shared Fate.
Yeah.
It kind of cuts down the amount of ships you can use, but I use the Advanced Research Vessel, the Sutherland, aka the T6 Nebula. So I use that. Basically, when I look down through there, I look at anything that's going to take off shields and do a good amount doing it, or do really good shutdowns. Because I still do an amount of power drain, because there's times shutting down something's power levels is really clutch. Hive Space Elite is a perfect example. Shutting down the Queen's Ox stops some of the most painful things we experience in that map.
I agree.
Sometimes too, I use the Quantum Phase set, which is another very powerful drain ability that's not an ability, it's a bridge officer ability. But I'll use Gravity Well with that, so pull everything together and then throw in the torpedo spread. So it's kind of using a tactical ability, but using it for the drain science.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a free 3-piece set. Are you using a full 3-piece or just the torpedo?
I'm using the full 3.
Yeah.
Because the Drain X affects the 3-piece beam as well.
And now, from what I saw, because, the few couple of times I've ever messed around with Drain, it was actually kind of what we talked about before. It was specific builds for specific things. And when the Zincathi STFs came out, when Zincathi Front Elite was an STF that was out, I noticed quickly that the Zincathi are kind of built on shield tanking. I mean, they have a lot of shields and high caps on them. So, decided to mess around with some drain builds for them. And, and that's where I found, I actually did choose the Sutherland as well. And, I found that there are consoles on some of these science ships that really do really nice things with drain, especially with those kind of numbers. So what are the consoles that you've seen? I know the Sutherland, that's why you use that one. What's that console about?
So the Sutherlands Console is a lovely, beautiful console. What it does is in a 3K, 3-kilometer area around you, it gives your allies shield regen, shield hardness, while draining your opponent's shields and reducing their shield hardness, which basically softens them up to get beat up. And this will tick down for 10 seconds, and at the end of 10 seconds, it has a second effect where it will shoot off an even larger shield drain and shield resistant or shield hardness debuff against foes, and then give your allies an even larger shield regen and shield resistance. I use it more in what I like to kind of call the classic Wrecking Ball sense of where I'll buff up really hard and I'll try to find a big cluster of spheres or pretty much anything that's red and hit the console and try to drain everything's shields in that area. You can get some pretty large numbers off of that because shield damage is very different than hull damage. Because realistically, most mobs in the game actually have 5 HP parts, or have 5 parts that have health. They've got 4 shield facings, and then they have their hull. Drain builds like mine, we kind of go after the shields because I've kind of caught on to the fact that everyone's going after hull damage, so it's hard to kind of divvy up that pie, and I rather kind of, eat something else. So I use that console. I also use its sister console for the 2-piece set, because that console by itself doesn't do anything really for PvE, but the 2-part bonus gives you a increase of Drain X of like 35, 36, which is kind of significant. I essentially, when I built this ship, I went through everything I had and I looked at what said it has Drain X, and I just started throwing consoles on until everything was filled up. And the nicest thing about it is, out of my 11 console slots, 2 of them come from ships, 1 of them comes from the R&D system, and the rest are rep or from the research holding.
Yeah.
So realistically, they're not expensive EC-wise. It's just a time investment you have to make for the lithium and fleet credits to get those, or the marks.
So, a wee bit of grinding, which, I mean, you kind of have to expect. You're not, but I tell people, too, sometimes when they're asking, like, what kind of build, if I'm, I don't have a lot of the high-end stuff and I'm just kind of getting into it, I always tell people exotic psi is actually, something you can get to relatively with a little bit of grinding, kind of things like that, and do good numbers. But Drain also, because like you said, the Quantum Phase set is something that's mission reward. You know,
Yes.
there's a couple of consoles out there from missions that will give you Drain. Then there's a lot of rep stuff, and the fleet research ones that we're talking about, the particle focusers, which are Drain X times 2. Those cost about 10,000 fleet credits, and I think 8,000 dilithium.
Yeah, something like that.
They're not very expensive. No, they're nothing like the old the Spire tactical consoles. So
Yeah, and they're fairly cheap to upgrade as well, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
they
if
don't
you look
take
on the
much.
exchange, you'll see an RCS accelerator or a field exciter with Drain X, 2-3 mil. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying this is a free, but that's something that's absolutely obtainable with a little bit of grinding. So
Well,
Yeah.
that,
And, like-
well, that is well, that you can always craft those things and try to chance it on your own. So
yeah, I mean that's the other thing.
Yeah, my only part is I kind of wish that those consoles you could salvage, because then that would just be the most beautiful thing for this.
Absolutely.
But
Now-
to the research consoles, I just want to throw it out there. They say Drain X2, but they're kind of weird. It's not exactly double drain. It gives you a bonus and then it gives you a sub bonus. But altogether at Mark 14 Epic, you're looking at 62.5 Drain X a console, and you can have 5 of those.
Yeah, I mean, so that's that's a big one. And right there, to be honest, there's no reason to have the field exciter. If you do have a ship that has 5 science things, because that's giving you more than the exciter would.
Yeah, I mean, really, I could see using the exciter if you wanted to do a little bit more drain exotic damage build. Like have boost Tychons, boost Gravwells. Like I can see trading off. I'm not saying you have to be like me and push this boat to the stupidest amount of Drain X. I just decided to do that because I wanted to see at what's going to be one of the peak levels of Drain X. How good is it, and how far can I pull it down?
you just want to get to that meme where it's over 9,000. That's what you want.
I have hit over 1,000 Drain expertise before.
It's over 9,000.
Now, one thing we kind of got to point out, and I don't want to say, we joke with you sometimes, like when we'll see you do 100K and you have those 2 million spikes, and we laugh that none of that damage was to hull. But, it's not fake DPS or anything like that, but you do have to kind of know what it is. So if you are going for one of these builds, there are a lot of benefits to you and the team. Again, stripping shields is, something that's going to help the team in most runs get the job done faster, things like that. But you do have to realize that damage, you might see some really good numbers DPS-wise, and then kind of wonder, why are things not dying as quickly? Well, because, again, you're stripping shields, and that damage is equated to those shields. And like we kind of talked about before, the consoles, the way some of them work, if they say they're going to strip 10,000 shields once every 10 seconds, those shields don't have to come back. It is literally going to give you 10,000 damage to shields every 1 second, whether those shields, you see them coming back or not. So,
yeah, I mean, basically with like shield stripping builds is, you're looking at taking damage from the shields. And honestly, my drain build specifically is more geared towards team play than it is me just queuing up and running into a solo map. I mean, there's a few that I can do okay in. CCA I can do solo just fine, but ISA and HSE I hardly ever just go into a random queue with this boat.
yeah.
If I'm pulling it out, I'm pulling it out with a purpose.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
I'm pretty sure we went over the basics, but is there any other little thing you want to...
Did you want to cover the PvP aspects of it?
Yeah, I haven't done some PvP recently in it, but I did it when we had that competitive map come out.
Yeah.
Essentially, the boat works well in PvP if people aren't prepared for drain boats. So, it's a little hard to fight engineers, but there are some tacticals and sciences that you can just absolutely shut down. depending on if you're in a PvP with people you know versus you're not. My build works really well because I have a lot of AoE heal type things to try to keep people alive, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends.
Now, a question actually that kind of relates to that in PvP. So I know Drain expertise is both a bonus to your Drain and also your Drain resistance. Now, like we said with Borg, you have the highest Drain that I've heard of, and your shields still come down. But is that, so like, with your Drain number at what it is, if somebody else came in with the same boat and tried to drain you, would it be way less effective because your resistance is at that level too?
The honest answer is I'm not sure because I've never really had that run up to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure.
Because for the most part, the PvP meta hasn't really been Drain friendly the last, I want to call it like year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Yep.
You know, we had a lot of immunity bypasses that they added into the game. A lot of emergency exit buttons and escape mechanisms. Because a lot of Drain used to be you kind of have to immobilize someone and then you have to sit them there and then kind of tear them apart. Almost kind of like in the actual show, like, you know, how the Borg holds somebody in a tractor beam and start chopping the ship up. It's almost like that with most Drain boats. It's not going to be something that, you know, you're going to fly in and one-shot these guys. You're going to fly in, you're going to throw a Tychon's Rift and, you know, an energy siphon and try to bring down their engines, bring down their shields, and just leave them dead in space.
Now, I have a question. So I know a lot of people come to me with their builds and they'll show they kind of want to shove on like some Drain and then torpedoes and then, you know, maybe a little bit of exotic damage and stuff like that. I mean, is it possible is it viable to squeeze that many things onto a ship, especially like with Drain, or if you're going to do Drain, do it all the way or not at all?
It really kind of depends on where you're going with the Drain. It's kind of the cop out, but it really depends on what your end goal is. My end goal is ripping out as much shields as fast as possible. But if you're looking for a little bit more control matchup, I could see dropping some Drain X on some of the different components in a ship to get a little bit more exotic particle damage, or break up a couple of these weapon sets to get some more damage hitting things. Because a lot of times, I'll be honest, I think my shield drain's overkill in some instances, because there's times we've all seen it that I press a button or two and then everything's shields are just gone. You know, could I probably pull back 100, 200, 300 Drain X off of my build and still be pretty effective? Probably, but I'm kind of stubborn about doing that because I really want to test kind of what's this upper limit on this Drain, because even with just this Drain boat, I've probably changed the traits around and the duty officers at least once a week just to see if there's anything that I can get better, because I found a lot of times in this Drain boat, because of the way how threat works in this game and how a lot of the consoles got changed, so threat's a lot more difficult to kind of get around. I have to run most of the time with threatening stance on for this bolt to work really effectively, which means I increase my threat. And because of that, and the fact that I run a gravity well and a Tychon's Rift, which are 0 point threat generators, you know, you throw Tychons, everything all of a sudden hates you. I have to run a lot more survivability than I necessarily want to. Pretty much all of my traits, with the exception of my personal traits of Inspirational Leader and Warp Core Theorist, or not Warp Core Theorist, sorry, Astrophysicist, and the Cyclical Power Capacitors, everything else I've run on this ship is survivability. 4 of my 5 starship traits are survivability traits. And honestly, the improved Tachyon Beam is survivability too, because it's a shield heal. So I'm running 5 survivability traits there. On my space rep, I'm running the advanced engines, hull repair nanites, aux power configuration off defense, and the automated protomatter conduits. The only thing that's really pulling shields is that piezoelectric weapons amplification, which is a proc on the few beams I actually have, and it just kind of strips shields here and there. But for the most part, I've pretty much built all my traits and a lot of my duty officers and all that around tanking, and then the ship itself is built around draining, because I tried to drop a lot of this tanking traits here and there, and I get killed. I get hurt really bad, because the Sutherland doesn't have a ton of hull, really, itself. I've got, like, I think it's about 70k, which is a decent amount, but there's only so many hits you can actually take.
To your point before about how you said that, you know, you could probably strip off a couple hundred and still do really good numbers. You know, when I was playing around with Drain, you know, I did see that not for everything, but for some abilities, there was kind of a number, like 550 or somewhere like that, where after that, certain things really didn't get much better. You know, so I know what you're talking about, but I also do understand the push it to the limit just to see how far we could go. I think a lot of us share that attitude when it comes to this.
Well, there's also that, and you have to think about the math behind the drain. So, like, for instance, the Sutherlands Console works off of how many mobs are in a 3k, you know, distance of you, times 4, which is each of their shield facings.
Yeah.
So, you know, say you've got 10 spheres stacked up, you've got 40 things being drained, you know, damage-wise right there. So the difference of 200-300 overall, that actually starts becoming a pretty significant, you know, difference every second for 10 seconds. You know, for 20 seconds, whatever it is. So, like, that's why I kind of push it to the limit, is because that's, realistically, it's min-maxing drain.
Alright, well, again, I want to thank Tankia, the Drain Master, for coming on and sharing some of his secret tips. Just a little heads up that for any of you guys who are subscribed to my channel, we actually are going to be changing up the format a little. We were going to change it this week, but there was just too much great content that came out that I had to dive into. So next week we're going to start it so that every Tuesday is something in the way of beam builds, every Thursday torpedo, and then on the weekend it's going to be based on comments that you leave on Tuesday and Thursday. Whoever has the idea of what kind of build or map or video they want to see will also win a 10-pack of keys. Give back a little to my subscribers and viewers and get some people involved.
So make sure you go to OTK Videos. The link is in the description below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
Catch us next week for some more great content here on STO Tech Trek. Thanks.